Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to the kitchen. So we are going to be making a muffin recipe today. This is going to be another one of those examples of having a basic recipe where you can put whatever you want as mix-ins. In this case, we're going to be using a thing of mixed berries that I got from Costco. This one is raspberries, blackberries, and blueberries. You can put in whatever you want. This is also a recipe that uses yogurt or sour cream, which is nice because it helps to make your product a lot more moist at the end. So a lot of other recipes with basic muffins tend to get a little bit dry over time, but these ones tend to hold on to the moisture, and they're really good in that case. So grab all of your stuff. The recipe is going to come on in a minute, so make sure you have all of your little bits separated so you can make sure that you have all of your stuff before you begin. So I have all of my mise en place set up. I've broken this up into two different areas. So over here are my wet ingredients. So I have my milk, oil. This is a just plain yogurt. We got my eggs, and I have my vanilla. On the dry side, there is baking soda, baking powder, salt, sugar, brown sugar, and flour. We're going to be doing the muffin method, which is actually a really nice method because it's very simple and it makes it so that you don't have a lot of dishes. If you went through the theory module on it, the muffin method is going to be the one where you basically mix all of your dry ingredients into one container. You're going to mix your wet ingredients into another one, and then you just mix the two of them together. Before we start, make sure you set your oven. This one is going to be going in at 425 degrees Fahrenheit. Muffins are one of those things where you want to bake them at a higher temperature, and that's what gives you such a high peak. Okay, so the higher the temperature, the higher your peak is going to be on it. If you lower the temperature, it'll still work out fine, just your peaks won't be as high. Okay, so your first order of business, mix all your dry ingredients together. So baking soda, salt, baking powder, sugar, and brown sugar. So now just grab a spoon, wooden spoon, metal spoon, doesn't matter, and just mix all that together. So we want to mix this together just to make sure that everything is evenly distributed. This is going to be really important because you have baking soda in there. Baking soda is one of those things that's really gross if you end up getting a chunk of it. Now, if you're really paranoid about it, what you could do is run this through a metal strainer or a sieve, and this will make it so that your ingredients are mixed together better. Okay, I'm just going to go on by hand now and try and break up and see if there's any other chunks of brown sugar. Okay, as you go through, if you have some little chunks, just break those up. So it's not a big deal if you end up with some chunks of brown sugar. That's actually one of the nicer surprises. If you bite into a muffin, you get a nice chunk of sugar in there. It tastes pretty good. Okay, so once we're done with that, the next thing you want to do, just gonna wipe this up. Next thing you're going to want to do is mix your wet ingredients together. So make sure you have all of those together. So milk, oil, yogurt, eggs, and vanilla. So I'm just going to leave the mix-ins, so the berries, for right after. Alright, so let's mix these together. There's my oil. Make sure you grab a spatula, so a rubber spatula, so you can get a lot of these things out of the container. You'll probably want this later on when you're putting the muffins into muffin tins anyway. So make sure you grab yourself a fairly large container. You don't want this to be filled all the way to the top because mixing it is going to be very difficult. So what I like to do here as well, crack your eggs into this container. If you have a bad crack, I guess you'd say, you can end up with a lot of little chunks of shell, And it's a lot easier to prevent them from going into your mixture by getting them out of here than by trying to fish them out of here. Okay, so that turned out pretty well. There's no eggs or eggshells in there. So if you have a whisk, this is the best thing that you can use for this situation. Oh, forgot my vanilla, put that in there. So the whisk is going to be your best choice of tool. If you don't have one, it's okay. You can still use a fork. That would work out really well too. Okay, I usually try and just mash up the egg yolks to try and break them up a little bit easier. And then I gotta mix this together. Okay, you don't have to mix this for a really long time. You're basically just trying to bring it all together so that you have a nice mixture. So there, everything seems like it's mixed in pretty well. And now you just have to mix this in with your dry. Okay, we get that in there. Scoop out the rest. And then I'll just use my wooden spoon. Alright, so you just want to mix this until it all comes together. And then we're going to mix our extras in. So we had berries for this one, but you could just as easily put in chocolate chips or nuts or anything else that you want to put in there. So if you want to make a citrus type muffin, you could put in like bits of orange or orange juice or lime or lemon or any of that kind of stuff. Right, so that looks pretty good. I'm going to mix these in. The one thing you want to note is that if you're using berries, you want to try and mix them just enough to get them all throughout the mixture. One of the things you'll notice is if you keep mixing it, the berries will break down, especially if it's raspberries or blackberries because they're segmented. Those break down really easily and it starts to discolor your mixture, which doesn't really matter. It's going to end up turning a little bit gray if you mix it a lot, but it doesn't affect the taste at all. Just you might not want gray muffins. Okay, so we'll throw these in. And I'm just going to gently mix that together. So I'm just going to use the spatula here to try and fold them in, because that'll make it so that they mix in but don't actually break up too much. So if you're ever wondering what folding was, it's just a gentle way of mixing things together. Okay, so the idea here is that you're just gonna keep tucking things under. So I'm gonna go underneath and just bring that over. Okay, keep doing that. And you're basically just kind of tucking everything in or folding it in. Okay, so now it's part of the mixture, but I didn't have to mix it in with a spoon because that would have broken them up more. Okay, so that's probably good. All right, so if you're ever missing some tools, it doesn't matter. You basically just try and use whatever you have on hand. Having tons of cooking gadgets and tools is great because it makes things faster and easier, but you can always get the job done with whatever you have on hand, even if it's just using your own hands. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is get our muffin tins ready. So we have 2 of these. If you have liners, just put them all in. I don't actually use liners because I feel like it's a waste of money. All I have to do is just spray these with oil and they'll come out no problem. So this recipe, I'm not sure how much it makes, so I guess we'll find out soon. But one of the things that you want to keep in mind when filling these things up, when you're baking it, the heat is going to work its way from the outside in. So that means that all the muffins around here are going to bake first. So these last 2 are always going to be the ones that are done last. So one of the things that I do is if I have a recipe that makes maybe 20 muffins, what I would do is just fill in these 10 and then fill in these 10 and just leave these 2 empty. And that makes it so that things are going to bake faster and more evenly, because these ones always tend to get just a little bit more cooked than these 2, especially in my oven because it's not convection. If you have a convection oven, it's not that much of an issue. Okay, so get your trays ready. Also, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use one of my baking pans. Okay, I'm going to put this on top of one of them and put that on the bottom. Now the reason for that is if my muffins end up getting a little too full or they expand too fast, they can come over the side, and at least there'll be a tray here to catch the extras. Okay, if this tray isn't here and it overflows, then it ends up going into the bottom of the oven, and that's just really bad to have to clean up. When you have your tray ready to go, make sure you spray the bottoms. So you can use just regular oil and just brush it in, or use butter. If you have spray oil, that works out the easiest for you. So make sure you give it a good spray. What you want to really make sure is that you get the bottom nice and coated. Yeah, this is going to make it so it's a lot easier to get out. So I'm going to use the yellow scoop. This is 1 5/8 ounces. If you don't have one, it's fine. Just use a spoon or whatever you got. You want to fill them about 3/4 of the way full. You don't want to get more full than that, otherwise you could end up having really overflowing muffins. If you don't have these scoops, if you ever get the chance, pick one up. They're really useful. It's nice to be able to use these because it's always going to be the exact same amount, and it's so much easier to portion things out. There. So looking at my mixture, I feel like I have probably enough for another 6 to 8. So I'm not going to fill up these two. What I'm going to do instead is grab my next one, and I am going to spray these. I can spray more if I need it. So if you have a little bit left at the end, it's up to you if you want to just try and add it to all the other ones, make them a little bit bigger, or if you just want to try and scoop it in and make a smaller one. So I'll do that for this last one. So this is all just my leftover batter. Here we go. So these will end up turning out pretty nice the way that they are. However, if you ever wanted to have like a little crumble on top, the crumble is usually made out of a mixture of flour, butter, brown sugar, and oats. For muffins, one of the things that you can do to just give it an extra little burst of sweetness and flavor is to just sprinkle a little bit of brown sugar on top. Okay, so you don't need a ton, just a little bit on top here, and this will give it a nice little finish, and it gives it some extra flavor when you first bite into it. All right, there we go. So we'll get these into the oven. My oven is set for 425, and it should take, I don't know, we'll say about 20 minutes or so, maybe 25. After about, I don't know, 18 minutes or so, that's what I'll set my first timer for. We'll check on them and see how they're doing. Okay, so get them in the oven and set your timer for 18 minutes to start. Alright, so these just came out of the oven. What you want to do is go for the thickest part of them to see if they're done. Just grab a toothpick. If you don't have toothpicks at home, just grab a paring knife. You want to make sure that you use something pretty thin to try and poke them. Okay, so it feels soft. Yeah, so you can see here that there is still batter left, so we'll have to put them in for a few more minutes. Okay, so we'll say about 4 more minutes, and then we'll try again. All right, here we go again. So it's been 4 minutes. Let's try them out. Alright, that one came out clean. Make sure you try a few different ones. Okay, each one should come out clean. So there's no dough left on any of these. So we're good to go. All you want to do is wait for these to cool down a little bit and then just pull them out and put them on a cooling rack and you should be good to go.